So today I want to talk about a union in New York City that recently went on strike. I want to talk about this case in particular because it's a really good representation of the extent at which workers need to go to obtain even the most meager of gains from the capital class, as well as the way that workers are generally undervalued and the ways in which business owners will twist narratives in order to deny workers what they need. This is a story that we should really all get behind in solidarity. With that said, let's take a look at their story. So, on January 16th, 2021, Hunts Point Produce Market Workers Union scheduled a strike for Sunday, January 17th, as negotiations on new contracts broke down. The 1,400 members of the Teamsters Local 202 have kept New York fed through the pandemic as employers cashed more than $15 million in forgivable pandemic loans. So basically, these are loans that were handed to the company in order to make sure they were able to stay open during the pandemic, especially because this is a place in which a lot of New York City's produce comes from. The majority of workers during this time and in their previous contract have been paid a base salary between $18 and $21 an hour. Meanwhile, the company has been making billions of dollars in annual sales and revenue. So the argument is that the employees should be able to share some of that $15 million and get it as their new contract comes up. Furthermore, they want some sort of healthcare and protection because they have been working straight through the pandemic. And before I go on with this particular story, I just want to take a little footnote and note that people who work in warehouses like this, being paid $18 to $21 an hour, this is actually kind of low for warehouse work as it is. But part of the reason that people like AOC and this particular union and the entire Teamsters organization went against Amazon entering into New York City in the first place is because Amazon pays warehouse workers $15 an hour. So while they tend to make it sound like they're giving really good deals, Amazon tends to really hurt workers. And in this particular case, if Amazon was in New York City, this union would not have a leg to stand on because the company would be able to say, well, I pay my workers between $18 and $21 an hour. They have nothing to complain about if the company didn't already come under some sort of issue because of Amazon being there. And it would have created a huge conflict that would have made things much more difficult, especially because Amazon workers can't unionize. And I think that's an important point to look at when examining how unions function and how cities tend to function when big companies like Amazon come in. Getting back to this story, though, this is not the first time that Hunts Point Produce Market has come into conflict with its workers. 3 years ago, when they were negotiating their previous contract, the workers needed a 30% raise in order to make rent and bills and to support their families. People were saying that they can't afford to stay in New York on the low wage that management was offering them. And they did threaten to go on strike at that point, and the company was able to give them the 30% raise that they wanted because of the threat of a strike. Furthermore, it was revealed around that time that the market is actually on city-owned property and that New York City actually pays $150 million to support its facilities. So basically, the city is supplementing this facility and company in order to make sure that New York City people are able to get access to produce. Given that subsidy, the workers really should be paid a sufficient amount. And again, this has not been the first time that contract negotiations have led to the point of people considering a strike. So, what's been happening in all of this? Well, they actually did go on strike. And the company actually does produce exactly 60% of the city's produce and spreads it across. So about 150 produce handlers at the facility, represented by the local 202 Teamsters Union, said that they help the company make billions of dollars. And if you look at how much that actually is, which we'll do shortly, it's actually a very significant amount. and that a pay increase is reasonable given that they've worked in person throughout the entirety of the pandemic. So what is this great desire that they have that they're asking from their company? They're demanding a $1 an hour raise plus healthcare support. Think about that for a moment. They had to strike over the desire to get a $1 an hour raise and healthcare support. And what did the market respond with? We'll give you 32 cents. And then they made it go up to 90 cents with healthcare incentives. That's horrible. That is not enough. And to negotiate a new contract in such a terrible way, 3 years later, considering inflation and everything else, that is absolutely absurd and ridiculous. And this is the extent that workers have to go to get even this minor gain from this market and the capital class. They don't want to give anything at all. Meanwhile, it's been found that 6 workers actually died in the facility from COVID-19, and 300 to 400 actually were infected. So this has been something that's really affected people, and it makes sense that they want more money towards healthcare during the pandemic, given all of this, and that they should, in fact, get at least $1 raise, if not more, given that they've been putting their lives on their line as essential workers. You know, they're essential workers until they actually demand more pay. The best they can do under these conditions is mask up, try to social distance, and do their jobs. And they've been doing that, even though they're in fear of their own safety and families when they go home, said Danny Kane, the president of Local 202. We don't think that what we're asking for is astronomical. And I'm inclined to agree. This is the most minor thing they could be asking for after a pandemic, after everything they've gone through, after 3 years of being under their former contract. This is the absolute minimum the company could give them. So what was the result of them striking? Well, if you hadn't guessed, police showed up. It is outrageous. After being called essential heroes for months, several of our members were arrested while peacefully protesting for a raise today, said the same Daniel Kane, president of the union. These are essential workers who went to work every day through the worst of the pandemic to feed New York. All they are asking for is $1 an hour raise so they can feed their families too. The fact that they were arrested on Martin Luther King Day reminds us what side of history we are on. And I think that's actually a proper use of calling Martin Luther King Day in, because this is happening in the Bronx. This is happening primarily to people of color who are not able to make their rents, who are not able to pay for food, who are struggling. These are the people that King would have wanted to be able to get a living wage. When he called for the more socialistic policies that he wanted in the United States, these are the people that he was calling to getting and receiving that. He was fighting on their behalf. And so we are still in this struggle to this day, and it keeps going on. And so I actually do want to show these clips of what happened with the cops. And I am just going to quickly plug my headphones in so we can listen together and I don't blare out speakers. Look at the level of police response that we're seeing there. And quickly just checking out the other clip.
If you remain in the roadway and refuse to utilize the sidewalk, you will be placed under arrest and charged with disorderly conduct. This is the New York City Police Department.
Look at that massive
force. You are unlawfully
force.
in the roadway and obstructing vehicular traffic. You are ordered to
They're
leave
in
the
riot
roadway
gear.
and
They've got
utilize the
batons
available
out.
sidewalk. If you do so voluntarily, no charges will be placed against you.
There has to be, no joke, close to 100
refuse to
police
utilize the
officers there.
sidewalk, you will be placed under arrest and charged with disorderly conduct. This is the New York City Police Department. You are unlawfully in the roadway and if you remain in the roadway.
And you know, Given what happened in the Capitol only however many days ago on January 6th, the absurdity that people protesting for $1 more an hour, people of color protesting for $1 more per hour, are treated quite this way. Meanwhile, you literally had people let into the Capitol, speaks to the absurdity in this country in terms of white supremacy and what, is able to be gotten away with. If this is a perfect example of what is being talked about when it's being said that there is a huge difference between the way people of color are treated by police and when white people are being treated by police. This is the example to look to right now, because there were nearly 100 police officers there. I swear to you, if you actually counted them, it would have come close. Versus, let's just move the barricades and let people in. But getting back to and focusing on this story, which is very important, the union ended up coming out and saying they can use riot cops to get trucks into the market, but the workers, they need to unload the trucks, are still on the picket line. We will stay on strike until these employers pay their workers the essential wage they deserve. Now, I need to point this out. This is important. Companies like this cannot work without their employees. Capital can have all of the industry, all of the means of production, but without the labor, without the people coming in and actually doing the work, they will not get anything done and they will make no money. That is why strikes are so effective. And that is the problem within the way capital is structured. People are essential to businesses, and that needs to be emphasized. You can argue that they're theoretically replaceable, but they're the people who are on the ground doing their job day in and day out, and they should be respected. They should be paid a proper wage. And under a system like socialism, or, going even further left, they would be treated well. In socialism, at the very least, they should have a democratic say at their pay and in their institution and the control of how things function. And that is the kind of thing that I, as a leftist, would like to see start happening over time. Even as an anarchist, moving in that direction would be a huge boost to people having access to money and resources outside of having to, scrounge themselves out there and go on a strike where they get busted by police officers like this. This is the kind of situation that needs to stop happening, and we need to start moving left so that this keeps changing, or that we can change this in the future, because this can't keep happening. So then we move into the mainstream, news sources, because previously we've been kind of looking at the union's perspective on all of this. So what does the Daily News have to say about this? Well, they give a lot of the story that the union spoke of, but then they give the flip side. And I feel like this is really important to look at, because the way at which companies tend to spin stories is a problem, because it makes it look like the, people striking are somehow committing an atrocity and asking for too much when they really are not. So let's go over this. So a spokesperson said that the Hunts Point produce market was willing to give the workers a raise over the next 3 years that would be more than the current annual cost of living increases. This is the 32 cents they were talking about. The company said they also agreed to pay $10,000 per employee for pension benefits and $15,000 per employee for healthcare benefits. But spokesman Bob Leonard said that the market lost $100 million in business after 2 regional supermarket chains went under during the pandemic, so they couldn't afford the raise the union wanted. Unfortunately, the union walked away from the bargaining table 12 days ago, and since then has focused only on bringing its members out on strike, which has been harmful to members of the community, Leonard said. So this is the kind of tactic that the capital class, the business owners, will often go to in order to try to shame and guilt the union and the workers in that way, and to make the community turn on the people. Well, they provide 60% of the produce for the city. So think about all the people who are going to suffer because they've demanded more money. How could they be so selfish? When in reality, they're the ones being selfish, not being able to spend another $1 on their employees per hour. And furthermore, you have this case where they make it sound like the incentives that they've given are so much. When you really break it down, it's the same 32 cents that they're talking about. And yes, the pension and everything is there, but that's probably part of the demands of the union. And if the union wasn't present, there's no way that would even be available to them. Furthermore, the fact that they are talking about this $100 million loss as if it's something significant is kind of deceptive. $100 million in revenue is nothing when you have a company that makes $2 billion in yearly revenue. And as we've shown, is supported with $150 million from New York City, who would probably gladly pay a little bit more to keep the only functional source, one of its only functional sources of produce alive. And that owners of the 54-year-old market, when they return this counteroffer of 90 cents per hour with 60 cents, going to health coverage and 32 going to salaries, makes it sound like it's such a big deal when they're making $2 billion a year in annual revenue. And when you really get down to it, people have been saying that they really deserve at least $4 an hour or more, but they've only been asking for $1. And yet this is the response they got from police. This is the response they got from their company. And to just tie it all together, this is another thing that management has said. An official statement released Friday reads, "We are very proud to have kept our union workers, the vast majority of whom live right here in the Bronx, working and on payroll with full health benefits as the Bronx has seen an unemployment rate of 40%. Even with the continued uncertainty surrounding the pandemic, we are offering our dedicated workers wage and benefit increases over the next 3 years that are a multiple of the current annual cost of living. We are continuing to negotiate in good faith with the union to keep our workers on the job and produce available in our region." And again, the way they spin this is that we're working hard to make sure that we get produce out to people. We are reminding people, by the way, there's a 40% unemployment rate, and we're being so generous by giving such a wonderful package. Because everyone else is suffering, you, as the employees in our company, should just be grateful for the little pittance that we're giving you. And this is intended specifically to drive people in the community against the people who are on strike. It is designed to say, well, yeah, there is a 40%, unemployment rate. Those workers should be absolutely grateful. No, that is exactly what the company wants people to think. That is exactly how the company turns community against each other. And this has happened historically and will continue to happen. We need to band together in solidarity in situations like this. We need to make sure that when a union like this comes out and says, we require this, even such a small gain, that we back them up and that we speak to communities and we call this out for what it is, a desire to undercut what workers are, deserving of, what they're owed, because this isn't even what the workers are owed. This company makes $2 billion in annual revenue, and I don't know what that translates into actual profits. But that has to be a significant profit margin, especially when they're being backed by the city. The employees should share in those profits. They should be making their fair wage, and they are not. And so they deserve all of the care, all of the solidarity, and all of the backing. With that said, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and bell for notifications. You can follow me on Twitter and check out my Discord in the description down below. My name is Anarchist Tara. Please support your unions, and I hope you enjoyed watching.